So you have 1 minute or less to do each question. Do you want to learn everything there is to learn about the Dutch integration process? You've come to the right place. Hey everyone, this is Rashi, your go-to guide to life in the Netherlands. And if you have just arrived in the Netherlands or are looking to get the Dutch citizenship or PR, then you have to deal with this beast, which is the Inburgeringsexamen or the integration exam. The integration exam process can be complicated and there's so much information out there, but I thought I'll sit down and make one video which tells you everything you need to know from someone who's already done it and passed. And I thought it could be helpful for some of you who are trying to do this exam. So let's get into it. Now, there are many reasons to want to do the integration exam. If you come here on a partnership or relationship visa or you're a refugee, you will get a letter from DUO stating that you need to integrate. DUO stands for Dienstuitvoering Onderwijs, which is basically the education implementation system, which takes care of education loans and the integration exam. And in that letter, there will be a date which says by this time you need to complete the integration exam. This is usually 3 years from when you arrive. And if you don't finish the exams within these 3 years, you get a hefty fine. And if you arrive here with a highly skilled migrant visa, then you don't have a timeline, but you need to do the integration exam if you want to get a permanent residence here or a Dutch citizenship. There are also exemptions from taking the integration exam. For example, if you have a learning disability, I'll leave a link below which mentions all the exemptions. If you arrived here after January 1st, 2022, you are bound to a different set of rules than people who arrived here before the 1st of January 2022. So I arrived in the Netherlands in August of 2019. So I had a slightly different process. So I'm gonna first cover that and then mention if there are any changes if you arrived after January 1st, 2022. If you arrived before January 1st, 2022, you have to do the A2 levels of exam. And if you arrived after, you have to do the B1 level of exams, which is a bit harder. Now, what are the types of exams that you have to take? There are 4 language exams and 1 knowledge exam. The 4 language exams are reading, listening, writing, and speaking. And the knowledge exam is the knowledge of Dutch society. And then depending on the level A2 or B1, you have another requirement, which is ONA or MAP. ONA is for people who arrived before 2022 and MAP is for the people who arrived after. But you can get exempt from them if you already have a job. So what I did was I waited until I got a job and then applied for exemption from ONA, and then I didn't have to do it and I got the certificate. And I decided to do this because I just knew I would get a job within 3 years of being here. So I just waited until I got a job, and you have to be employed for I think 6 months for at least 20 hours per week, and then you can apply for an exemption and you will get exempt. I will leave a link to the information about MAP because I haven't done that, and that is very new. So I will leave the link where it explains a bit more about MAP. Once you know that you want to take the integration exam, you can start preparing for it. I have a full video on how I taught myself Dutch, which you can find here. This is what I did to prepare for the integration exam and get familiar with the language. And specifically for the integration exam, these are the books I used to practice for the exam. The Inburgeringsexamen A2 book is really good because it's very tailored to teaching you Dutch just for the exam. So there's a lot of practice tests in there. And this book is really, really important for the Dutch culture exam. This whole book is in Dutch, so you have to be at a bit of a certain level to read Dutch. But a lot of the questions that would come for the exam are in this book. So together with this book and the resources I mentioned in the previous YouTube video is how I started to prep for the exam. You could also opt to do a language course, which I didn't, but I know there are a lot of language schools specifically for the integration exam. And that is also a good way to reach a certain level of the language and practice along with the teacher if that's what you prefer rather than self-study. Once you have the study material or you're in a language class and you're learning Dutch, I would highly recommend doing a lot of the practice tests. There are a ton of practice tests on the DUO website, and they're in the format of the exams. So you can do mock exams on their website and see your timing and how many questions you got right and if you would pass. And it's kind of also great to be familiar with the format before the actual exam. Now, once you're feeling a bit more comfortable, you're learning the language, you're practicing, now it's time to register for the exams. When you're registering for the exam, you should keep in mind it could take 6 weeks or more. So if you have a deadline by when you have to integrate, you should keep that in mind and not leave it to the really last minute, because then you could get fined. Important to know that these exams cost money. So each exam costs 50 euros. And if you don't pass the first time and every time you make an attempt, it's going to cost another 50 euros. To register, you go on Inburgering.nl and log in with your DigiD, and you can choose the municipality where you will give the exam. I just picked the closest one from me in Amsterdam. All of this information is laid out in Inburgering.nl, which I will link below. And now let's quickly go through each exam and what I felt each exam was in difficulty level and the ease of taking the exam. Before you actually take the exam, they make you sign a confidentiality agreement where you can't share the questions that were in the exams with anybody. So I'm just going to share with you the practice tests that are on their website. The reading exam is a bit in format of a reading comprehension. They give you a paragraph that you have to read and then give you multiple choice options that you have to pick. In terms of difficulty level, this was, I think, one of the easiest because you just have to read a paragraph and there are a lot of hints to what the answer would be. Next up is the listening exam. They show you a video, which is a conversation between two people, and you have to listen to the conversation and then answer the question that is mentioned with multiple choices. I also found this exam to be quite easy because you can already read the question and just watch out for that moment where they say the answer in the video. The next exam is the speaking exam, which I think is a bit tricky because they do judge you on the pronunciation and if they actually understand what you're saying. So the speaking exam works like there's a video of somebody asking you a question and then you have to record your answer on the microphone. So the questions can be something like this.
Reist u vaak met de bus? Vertel ook waarom.
So this is the question where he asks, do you often ride the bus? Also tell us why. The good thing about it is that they do speak very slowly so you can understand what they're asking. But then when you answer, my biggest tip is to keep the answer as short as possible. You don't have to answer what is actually your answer. You have to think of the shortest answer that you can think of and the words that you know. So for this, I would answer, nee, als ik heb een auto. No, because I have a car. I would say for the speaking exam, doing the practice test helps a lot. And there are also extra practice questions on YouTube that you can find, which I would say you should practice so you can get in the mind frame of practicing these questions under a short period of time and answering really short sentences so you're not likely to make a mistake. Next exam is the writing exam, which I also think is a bit tricky and I found the most difficult because this is where you have to come up with a lot of words and sentences yourself. This is one of the examples that's on the Duo website. So in this, you have to basically write an email saying you can't make it to an appointment and can we make a new appointment. So the writing exam is mostly like write an email to MediaMarkt or write an email to your friend or write an email to your school. And for this, I would really recommend doing a ton of practice tests. There are a lot of them in this book that I mentioned before. What they're looking for is concise and correct sentences. So the shorter and simple your sentence is, the less likely you will make a mistake. The next exam is the Dutch culture exam. The Dutch culture exam was surprisingly really difficult because you get 40 to 43 questions and you have 40 minutes to complete the whole thing. So you have 1 minute or less to do each question. I can't mention what I was asked, but there are questions that if you've been living in the Netherlands for less than a year, there's no way you know the answer. It was not in the book. How am I supposed to know? So I think you have to use a bit of critical thinking and guesswork for some questions. But I think if you go through this book from cover to cover, it should be enough to at least pass the exam. I think it's a great fun party idea if you have Dutch friends to do like an Inburgeringsexamen Nacht and ask Dutch people the questions they ask in the practice exam. It's so fun. Speaking of passing the exam, what are the marks you need to pass? You're given marks from 1 to 10 and you need to score 6 or above to pass. And other than this, you have the labor market exams, which is the ONA and MAP, as I mentioned. I didn't do the ONA, so I don't have a lot of information. I'll link a website which has more information on it below. Go to the website and log in with your Dikide, and you can see your entire exams that you're supposed to do, that you've already done, the scores you got. And this is where you can also apply for the exemption of the ONA. And they already have your information of how long you were employed, so they do the check themselves. You don't have to do anything. You just have to say, I want to apply for exemption, and they approve it themselves. So what's it like actually taking the exam? If you're someone who is not a good exam taker and makes you nervous, it is kind of calming. There's so many different adults in the room taking the exam with you and are probably nervous as well. Once the exam starts, it is a taking time off because you have to get through those questions in the time frame. So when you're doing the practice test, I really recommend timing yourself because there's not a lot of time. And that was the most surprising thing about the exams because the time goes really fast. And apart from these exams and labor market projects, you have to sign the participation statement. This is free and you have to go to a location and sign this statement, which basically says that you agree that everybody in the Netherlands is equal, everybody's free to choose their own religion, everybody can say what they have to say, and you're not allowed to discriminate. These are the number of exams and things you have to do to pass the integration exam. The process is quite automated, and I would say you should spend most of your time in doing the practice exams and getting a bit more comfortable with the language. I did the A2 level, so difficulty-wise, I would say it was not that difficult. I could do it just with self-study, so if you're doing a language course, it would be even easier. But with the exam switching to B1, I'm not sure of the difficulty level. I'm sure it's a bit more difficult, but still doable. So I would say don't get scared because a lot of the exams are multiple choice questions. If you're looking at timelines, I would say get this over with as soon as possible. Maybe you have to take the exams a couple of times, or there are long waiting periods to take the exam. So after you've done all the language and knowledge exams and you've done the ONA and MAP, or you are exempt from it, you're gonna get the Inburgering certificate. This is what it looks like, and this is the document they will ask for when you apply for citizenship or PR. The day this document arrived, I was so excited. I felt like I had accomplished something so big, and I celebrated with putting some Dutch songs on and partying in the living room because it was COVID, so there's nothing else I could do. But it is so exciting when you finally finish this and it's done, and it's so worth it. So to sum it up, based on when you arrived in the Netherlands, look up the information of what you need to do. If you arrived before the 1st of January 2022, you need to do A2 levels of exam and ONA. And if you arrived after that date, then you need to do B1 level of exams and MAP. First, wait for the letter from Duo for when you have to integrate, or if you're applying for the citizenship or PR, then I would say just get it over with and then wait for when you're eligible to apply for the PR or citizenship. Once you know you have to integrate, get study materials or enroll in a language school to get up to speed with the level of Dutch language you will have to give the exams in. While you're doing that, practice, practice, practice. Do as many practices as you can, because that is what will really make you comfortable in that exam room and make it really familiar. And while you're studying and practicing for the exam, I would say check the dates that are available for you to give the exam, because when you're ready to give the exam, the date of that is available might still be 6 weeks away. Sometimes it just happens that you don't pass the exam in the first attempt. So leave time for second attempt so you're not delayed with your integration. So make sure you have the funds set aside either for language school or the exams, because integration costs money. You also have to sign the participation statement. If you don't sign the participation statement, your integration is not complete. So look that up and register for a location where you can go sign that statement. So that is the full process of the integration exam. I hope it helps. Share it with friends who have to do the integration exam. And if you think this will help them, if you have any questions, you can leave them below and I will drop all the links in the description box that could be helpful. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button and the bell icon to get notified of when I post a video. I'll be making content about everything there is to know about living in the Netherlands and my life in the Netherlands as an Indian. So stay tuned for more and see you next time. Bye. I'll be making content about everything.